All right, everybody. So if you are a subscriber to the Creative Cloud, you'll notice that Adobe rolls out different changes every so often. One of those changes happens to be in Photoshop, deals with the Liquify tool, which if you do any type of retouching, it doesn't have to be like high-end fashion retouching. If you do any type of photo touch-ups in Photoshop, I really think the Liquify tool is one of the strongest tools that they have inside of there. So I want to show you where one of the features is Liquify with smart objects and why that matters. So let's go ahead. We've got a photo open here. I'm going to come into the filter menu, go to Liquify. So I've got the Liquify dialog open. One of the things that I use Liquify, Liquify gets such a bad name because you could take photos and you can do all kinds of crazy stuff with them. But we don't want to do those kinds of crazy things with it. All we want to do are very simple things, like what I do all the time is I'll tend to just tuck in little folds on clothing. Like, see how the clothing and the folds start to stick out there? I'll just take a really small brush and I'll make sure I use that very first tool. Okay, it's the forward warp tool. And I'll just take a really small brush and I'll just push in those little awkward folds in the clothing that tend to just disrupt. And this isn't anything wrong with the portrait. This is more the photographer, which was me, by the way. This is more the photographer's fault for saying, hey, do this awkward pose that wraps your arms in weird ways and contort your clothing. So there's nothing wrong with it. It's just we come in here and we can kind of fix and touch up those little areas. Okay, so that we're not doing just crazy weird things with the Liquify tool. We're just doing very, very subtle things to help kind of take away some of the distractions in the photo. All right, and then what I would do is I would click OK. And so I have it done. And you can see here, that's before, that's after. All right, so simple changes, and then I would go on and start to maybe go to my spot healing brush, do some retouching. We have a little button on her pants there, but she's wearing really dark pants, so it looks out of place. So I would just take the spot healing brush, remove that, maybe clean up any little spots in the background here. And then as I start to do other things, I realize, you know what, maybe I went a little bit too far in one of these areas over here. Maybe that looks a little bit awkward, and I want to go back. Well, the problem is I have to undo. And while I just maybe did 3 or 4 things after with the spot healing brush here, maybe you remove some of those flyaway hair. Well, I might have just done 3 or 4 things here. You could very well have embarked on another 5 minutes worth of changes just to realize you want to go back and change that. And then you'd have to go back in. You'd basically have to undo if you wanted to change something here. You'd have to undo all the way back or start over. So let's go ahead and undo. I am going to undo because I'm going to show you what changed with that latest Creative Cloud update. And that is, if you go up here and to the layer menu, you go down to smart objects and you convert this layer to a smart object before you go into the filter dialog. Now I can go down here, or into the Liquify dialog. Now I can go down here to Liquify and I can make all these changes. I'm not going to go through the whole thing. I'll just kind of go to a couple of them here. I can make some changes. I can hit OK. All right. Now this is on what they call a smart filter because I did it on a smart object layer. That's what that little badge down there means. What it means is now I can double click. This is going to open up. I actually opened up the file. I can double click on Liquify. It's going to open up the Liquify dialog box again, and it's got all of my changes inside of here. All right. So now this was all non-destructive. I could hit restore. See how it goes back? Let me undo for a second here. Just hit restore all, and it goes back to all my changes, but I won't have lost everything that I did onto this photo since then. So any changes that I made after I went in and did my retouching, which again, let's just go here. We'll tuck these things in. Click OK. I can add an adjustment layer if I want to, do a levels adjustment layer, add a little bit of contrast here. Come back, maybe add a hue saturation adjustment layer. Maybe I reduce the saturation. All these things still stay, and I can still always come back down here to Liquify, open it up, and hit restore. And I'm right back to where I started, so I can go in here and tweak that, but it won't affect, when I click OK, it won't affect everything else that was done onto the photo here. Okay, all of your layers, and you can do all your retouching on separate layers too. All that still stays intact. So that was one of your updates with the Creative Cloud. Here, I'll show you another example, and I do this all the time too. Again, it's just sometimes awkward angles, awkward posing. And here's a great example. We'd go here first, go to Smart Objects, convert it to a Smart Object, and then another example for Liquify is I'd make my brush a little bit larger. just hit the right bracket key. And then if you look her, just because of the angle that the photo's taken out, kind of looks like her hips bowed out a little bit, like she's leaning. So we can kind of just tuck that in. We're not changing her body figure or anything like that. We're just kind of taking that hip in because of the way that photo looked and the angle that it's at kind of makes it look like she kind of kicked her hip out there. So we can change that. We can even come up here and maybe, pick that shoulder up a little bit just because of the angle of her body. So lots of things we can do with the Liquify tool that are not the crazy bloat and weird kinds of things that you see done with the Liquify tool a lot of times. A lot of times it can be very subtle things just with clothing or poses, and I think it helps a lot. And it helps a lot now to have that as a smart filter because now you can always go back and change it.